The tourist crossed the line, patted the guardsman on the shoulder, and sneered. "So, you're alive now?" But with a single movement and a booming voice, the soldier shifted the entire mood. And when the horse backed up its partner, the crowd collectively held its breath. This day would be remembered for a long time. What happened next? London on a sunny day is a sight both grand and chaotic. Outside Buckingham Palace, crowds of tourists swarm like ants, each eager to capture a moment. Some snapping selfies, others fervently photographing the guards. At the center of attention stands a royal guardsman, a figure of majesty. His iconic bearskin hat glistens under the sunlight, and his scarlet tunic is impeccably pressed. He is as still as a statue, embodying tradition, discipline, and dignity. The guards are not just symbols. They are a living connection to Britain's storied past. Yet for some, that meaning seems to be lost. Amid the crowd, one individual stands out. He doesn't bother to conceal his audacity. In fact, he thrives on the attention. He's wearing a t-shirt with a bold yellow slogan, "I own this," as if he had just bought the whole of London wholesale. In his hands is a camera, and from his mouth pours an endless stream of commentary. "Hey, you in the hat, smile for the camera. Are you even human, or are you a robot?" he shouts, laughing at his own joke. The crowd begins exchanging glances. Some flash uneasy smiles, clearly trying not to attract the provocateur's attention. Others covertly record the scene on their phones. After all, this could be funny, or disastrous. But the guardsman remains motionless. His gaze is fixed in the distance, his body unwavering. This isn't indifference. It's the result of years of rigorous training. Inside him burns a steadfast commitment to his duty. He didn't endure countless months of drills and discipline to be shaken by taunts. But did you notice that subtle moment when his jaw tightened ever so slightly? Yes, he feels the pressure. The tourist, oblivious or willfully ignorant of the silent warning, continues his performance. "Well, since you're just standing there like a museum piece, let me tickle you to liven things up," he declares loudly. The irony. This tourist seems to fancy himself the hero of the evening. In his eyes, the guardsman is not a soldier, but an entertainer, obliged to please anyone who bought a plane ticket to London. The tourist, apparently unimpressed with the crowd's reaction to his jokes and shouts, decided it wasn't enough. How could it be, when the guardsman remained as still as a statue, his stern gaze betraying not even a flicker of emotion? For a man in a t-shirt emblazoned with, "I own this," who saw himself as the center of the universe, such indifference was unacceptable. "Well, if you want a show, you've got to take matters into your own hands," he must have thought, as if quoting some imaginary manual on tourist audacity. He boldly stepped over the white line. You know the one. It's more than just a mark on the ground. It's a boundary, a symbol of respect for the divide between tradition and entitlement. But for him, it was just another line to cross. His boots clacked loudly on the cobblestones, stirring unease in the crowd. "Come on, do something!" he shouted, raising his arms as if inviting the guardsman to a duel. The crowd collectively flinched, as though they were one living organism. The expressions on their faces were unmistakable. "Who does that? This is beyond inappropriate." Tink. An elderly woman standing off to the side couldn't hold back any longer. "Leave him alone! This isn't a joke!" she called out, her voice trembling with indignation. But the man simply smirked, not even glancing her way. "Oh, relax, Grandma. It's all in good fun," he replied over his shoulder, as if reassuring a child afraid of a circus clown. Suddenly, his hand shot up, and he slapped the guardsman on the shoulder, as though testing if he was real. In that instant, the crowd collectively gasped. Time seemed to freeze as everyone held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The guardsman swayed slightly, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. Then, with a voice as loud as thunder, he bellowed, "Step back from the line!" The tourist flinched, like a schoolboy caught in the middle of mischief. His grin faltered, but didn't vanish entirely. Oh, wow, you're alive. All right, let's see what else you've got, he quipped, pretending he wasn't rattled. At that moment, the guardsman took a step forward, his gaze icy and commanding. It wasn't just a step, it was a statement, a reminder that this wasn't a clown or a museum exhibit standing before the crowd, but a real soldier. The atmosphere shifted. The crowd began murmuring anxiously. Some pulled out their phones to record the scene, sensing that things were about to escalate. Some looked thrilled by the brewing drama, while others appeared visibly uncomfortable. The murmurs in the crowd turned to hushed outrage. "This has gone too far," muttered an elderly man in a hat. "How dare he? It's downright disrespectful," added a young woman with a camera. But the tourist seemed oblivious to the fact that his little performance had morphed into a moral fiasco. The guardsman finally broke his majestic silence. With one confident step, he moved beyond the boundaries of his post like a statue come to life and pointed firmly to the white line. His movement was a silent reminder. There are limits, both physical and moral. His voice, deep and thunderous, like rolling storm clouds, shattered the tense quiet of the crowd. "Step back behind the line!" The crowd collectively flinched, as though an invisible string had been pulled. The mood shifted instantly. Laughter ceased, smartphones shot up into the air, and dozens of lenses turned toward the tourist, who now looked far less self-assured. But the tourist wasn't ready to back down just yet. "Oh, so you're alive after all. Well then, bro, wanna snap a photo with me?" he sneered, though his voice now lacked the bravado it had before. Almost unconsciously, he adjusted his t-shirt with the bold, "I own this" slogan, as if trying to reclaim some of his fading confidence. Then, the situation unexpectedly turned against him. The horse standing beside the guardsman suddenly raised its head, letting out a sharp, almost warning-like sound. Its large, expressive eyes locked onto the tourist, and for a moment, he froze under its gaze. The horse, until now the very embodiment of patience, seemed to say, "You've gone too far, buddy." The crowd erupted in applause. Even those who had been silently recording the drama just moments ago joined in with enthusiastic cheers. "Serves him right," someone shouted. "You're done, mate. Just leave already," added an older gentleman in a sharp suit who stepped closer to the commotion. His voice was steady and authoritative. "Young man, you are violating royal protocol. The police are on their way." The mention of police hit the tourist like a splash of cold water. He started glancing around nervously, and for the first time, a hint of worry crossed his face. But just then, something happened that completely shifted the tone. The guardsman turned away from the tourist and directed his attention toward a young boy in a wheelchair who had been quietly watching the entire scene with wide, unblinking eyes. The boy's face showed a mix of fear and wonder. The guardsman leaned slightly toward him, maintaining his stoic demeanor, and gave the boy the tiniest of winks. It was a subtle gesture, but its meaning was unmistakable. "Everything is under control." The crowd lit up with renewed energy. Applause grew louder, and the boy's face lit up with pure joy. His mother, standing beside him, wiped away tears of gratitude. The tourist, witnessing this display, began to retreat slowly. His steps were hesitant, and the bold slogan on his shirt now seemed laughably pathetic. He glanced around, likely searching for an escape route from the scene that had turned so spectacularly against him. Meanwhile, the crowd continued to cheer for the guardsman, who returned to his post, resuming his stance as if nothing had happened. The wink would be a memory the boy cherished for the rest of his life. As for the tourist, he would likely be reminded of his performance for years to come, thanks to the videos already spreading across social media. At last, the tourist fully grasped the weight of his situation. His confidence had evaporated, taking his arrogance with it. Under the approving murmurs of the crowd, 2 police officers approached him with deliberate steps. "Sir, you'll need to come with us," one of them said flatly. The guardsman, not sparing even a glance in his direction, stood motionless once more, as if the entire episode had never happened. But it was clear to everyone, his presence had been the cornerstone of this just conclusion. The crowd buzzed with approval, breaking into whistles and calls of "serves him right." Some began clapping, and even those who had been recording for entertainment now joined in. "That's what happens when you cross the line," remarked a woman with a bright-colored handbag. Death. Meanwhile, videos of the incident began flooding social media. Headlines blared across platforms. "Bold tourist versus royal guards. Who wins? The guardsman stands tall." And even "Tradition clashes with audacity at Buckingham Palace." The comments were sharp and full of emotion. "Finally, someone put these entitled tourists in their place. This guardsman is the hero we all needed." So satisfying to see that boundaries still mean something. Somewhere online, someone quipped, "The bear on his hat must be so proud right now." The guardsman, as expected, remained above the digital fray. With a slight adjustment of his bearskin hat, he stepped back into position and resumed his silent vigil, as if the scene had never unfolded. The crowd paused for a moment, then erupted into thunderous applause. Their eyes reflected not just admiration, but gratitude, for reminding them that honor and discipline are not just words. The young boy in the wheelchair gazed up at the guardsman with wide-eyed awe. His voice, soft but firm, carried clearly through the crowd. "He's a real hero." The crowd responded with cheers. His mother, still teary-eyed, whispered, "Thank you." The sun continued to shine brightly, casting its golden glow over the palace courtyard. Slowly, people returned to their usual routines, some taking selfies, others chatting animatedly about what they had just witnessed. London slipped back into its characteristic hustle and bustle, but this moment would linger in the memory of everyone who saw it. Somewhere in this vast city, among its humming streets and towering monuments, tradition had once again proven its enduring strength.